My son looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Don't expect a dime from Dad's 77 million. That sentence has echoed in my head every night since George's funeral. I never thought I'd live to hear such cruelty, from the boy I carried, the boy I raised with every ounce of love I had. But before I tell you what happened, let me ask you this. Where are you watching from? Are you here in California like me or somewhere else in the world? Tell me in the comments. I love knowing where my listeners are from. And if stories like mine touch your heart, please subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of my journey. George and I had been married for nearly 50 years. We started with nothing. He worked 3 jobs while I sewed clothes for neighbors, all so we could save for the future. Little by little the future came. A small construction business. Then an investment in real estate. Then somehow through decades of sweat, risk, and sleepless nights, we built an empire worth $77 million. But to me it wasn't just money. It was George coming home late, his hands blistered and shoulders stooped, saying, "One day, Evelyn, this will mean security for our family." It was me staying up past midnight, balancing ledgers by lamplight, whispering prayers that the bills would get paid. It was sacrifice. It was love turned into legacy. When George passed, a hole opened inside me that no amount of money could ever fill. The funeral was crowded. Business partners, neighbors, even distant relatives came. But the seat beside me at the church felt cold without his hand in mine. Daniel, our only son, stood tall at the podium, giving a eulogy that brought tears to strangers' eyes. For a moment I was proud. Proud that George's legacy lived on in him. But that pride didn't last. Just 3 nights later, in the quiet of the villa's study, Daniel came to me. He didn't soften his voice. His words were clipped, cold. "Mom," he said, "don't expect a dime from Dad's 77 million. It's mine now. All of it." I froze. "Daniel, what are you talking about?" He shrugged almost casually. "Dad built everything for me. He wanted me to carry the torch. You don't need all that money, you're old. You should just live quietly." My chest tightened. "I built this with him. Every sacrifice, every late night, your father and I did this together. It was for the family. For you, yes, but not only you." His eyes hardened, a flicker of Jessica's voice in his tone. "Jessica and I have plans. We'll make the business bigger, stronger. You wouldn't understand." I whispered, "Plans that don't include your own mother?" He looked away and the silence was answer enough. That night I sat alone in George's chair, staring at the framed photos on the wall. Daniel's childhood smile, his graduation day, his wedding, moments I had cherished, now tainted. I pressed my fingers to the cold glass of George's photo. "What happened to our boy?" I whispered. "How did love turn to greed?" The next morning I dressed in black again, not for a funeral but for the meeting at the law office. It was time for the will to be read. I walked into the oak-paneled room with trembling hands, Jessica already seated, her lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Daniel sat beside her, his arm draped possessively across the back of her chair. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, shuffling through papers. And as he began to read George's final words, I realized the storm had only just begun. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of leather and old paper. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the polished oak table where I sat across from my son and his wife. Jessica's perfume hung heavy in the air, sweet but suffocating. She looked like a queen on her throne, perfectly poised, her manicured nails tapping the armrest. Daniel sat beside her, stiff-backed, eyes darting between the lawyer and me. "Let's get this over with," Jessica murmured, loud enough for everyone to hear. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We are here today to read the last will and testament of Mr. George Carter." My heart twisted at the sound of George's name. It had been only weeks since I buried him, and here we were, already dividing his life's work like spoils. The lawyer began. "To my beloved wife, Evelyn Carter, I leave the villa in Los Altos Hills, our primary residence. Along with this, I leave her the right to retain all personal property contained therein." I gasped softly. The villa, our home. I hadn't known George put that in writing. Jessica's lips tightened. Daniel's jaw clenched. The lawyer continued. "Furthermore, I leave to Evelyn Carter the sum of $10 million, to be managed at her discretion." The air went still. 10 million. I blinked back, tears, my fingers trembling. George had ensured I wouldn't be left at anyone's mercy. He had thought of me. Jessica broke the silence first, her voice sharp. That can't be right. 10 million? The villa? No, George told Daniel everything was his. All 77 million. The lawyer's brow furrowed. I assure you, Mrs. Parker, these are Mr. Carter's explicit instructions. The remaining estate, approximately 67 million, is indeed left to your husband, Daniel Carter. But the division is clear. Daniel slammed his fist on the table. This isn't fair. Mom doesn't need that kind of money. She's old. She doesn't know how to manage it. Jessica and I, we're the ones building the future. I flinched at his words, pain searing through me sharper than any knife. The lawyer's voice remained calm. Mr. Carter, your father wanted to provide for both his wife and his son. These are his final wishes. Jessica leaned forward, eyes cold. Wishes can be challenged. My husband is the rightful heir. Everyone knows George meant for him to inherit everything. Her words dripped like poison aimed straight at me. I found my voice, though it shook. George and I built this together. Every brick, every dollar, every sacrifice. We both made them. And he wanted me safe. Daniel turned on me, his face twisted with anger. Safe? You think 10 million isn't enough? You should be grateful, Mom. Instead, you're standing in the way of what's mine. My hands trembled in my lap. The boy I raised, the man George was so proud of. How had he turned into this? The lawyer gathered the papers. The will stands as written. Contesting it will require legal grounds, and at present I see none. Jessica's eyes narrowed, a smile playing at her lips. Oh, don't worry. We'll find a way. Her confidence chilled me. After the meeting, I lingered in the hallway, staring at George's signature on the final page of the will. His handwriting, strong even at the end, was like a whisper from beyond. I protected you, Evelyn. Don't let them take it away. Outside, Jessica's voice cut through the air. This isn't over. That villa, that money, it belongs to us. One way or another we'll have it. Daniel said nothing, but his silence was worse than words. I clutched my purse close, whispering to myself, not if I can help it. That night, back at the villa, I sat alone in the master bedroom. $10 million, the lawyer said. It should have brought comfort. But instead it painted a target on my back. I knew Jessica. She wasn't the type to accept defeat. And Daniel, he was already slipping further into her shadow. I whispered into the quiet, George, I'll fight for what you left me. But I don't know if I'm strong enough. And in the darkness, the creak of the house seemed to answer, you are, Evelyn. You are. The days after the will reading felt like walking through a minefield. At first, I tried to find peace in the villa George and I had built together. I tended to the roses in the garden, I cooked meals for one, I whispered to his photo at night. But peace didn't last. Because Jessica had already begun her war. It started subtly. A neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, stopped me in the driveway. Evelyn, dear, she said cautiously, Jessica told me you've been forgetting things. She's worried about you managing such a large estate alone. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Forgetting things. I've managed this household for 50 years. I kept George's books when the business was just a dream. Mrs. Thompson gave a tight smile. Of course, dear. But you know how gossip spreads. Her eyes said it all. People were beginning to doubt me. At the market, whispers followed me down the aisles. Such a shame. 72 and still holding on to money she can't handle. Daniel and Jessica should be running things. She's not thinking clearly. My face burned as I pretended not to hear. Each word chipped away at me, making me question if I could hold on against the storm Jessica was building. One afternoon I found Daniel in the study, staring at George's old desk. Daniel, I said softly. Why are you letting her do this? Why are you letting her tell people I'm unstable? He didn't meet my eyes. Jessica just thinks you're under a lot of stress. People worry, Mom. Worry. My voice trembled. She's trying to paint me as senile. Don't you see? She wants the villa, the money, everything. And she's using you to get it. He finally looked up, his face hard. You don't understand, Mom. Jessica knows how to handle things. She's strong, she has vision. Dad wanted me to lead, but I need her. Without her, I'm nothing. My heart broke. You're not nothing. You're my son. But you're letting her turn you against me. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. I'm not against you. But if you keep fighting her, you'll lose me. Then he left, the slam of the door echoing like a gunshot. That night as I sat alone in the kitchen, the phone rang. It was Laura Briggs, an old friend and retired investigator George had once trusted. "I read the will in the paper," she said bluntly. "And I've been hearing things. Jessica's spinning stories about you, calling you confused, saying you can't handle your affairs. Evelyn, that's elder abuse dressed up as concern." Tears welled in my eyes. "She's turning everyone against me, Laura. Even Daniel." Laura's voice sharpened. "Then fight back. Don't let them erase you. Start documenting everything, every word, every move. Jessica's clever, but clever people slip when they get greedy." I clutched the phone, hope flickering in my chest. "Will you help me?" Her answer came steady as steel. "Always." But Jessica wasn't slowing down. 2 days later, I received a letter from the bank. It stated, in polite but chilling terms, that Jessica had contacted them, claiming I had authorized her to co-manage my accounts. I hadn't. I stormed to the bank, papers in hand. The manager looked flustered, apologizing as he showed me the authorization form. My heart dropped. There on the bottom line was my name, written in a smooth, practiced hand that wasn't mine. A forgery. I walked out of the bank with shaking legs, the world tilting around me. Jessica wasn't just whispering lies. She was laying foundations brick by brick to steal what George left me. And unless I fought with everything I had, she might succeed. I pressed George's photo to my chest that night. They think I'm too old, too weak to stop them. But I will not let our legacy be stolen, George. Not while I still have breath. The morning after I discovered the forged bank authorization, Laura came by the villa with a battered leather notebook in her hands. "You were right to call me," she said, settling at George's old desk. "I've seen this kind of fraud before. They start small, fake a signature, whisper about your memory, until people believe you're incompetent. Then they take everything." I slid the authorization form across the desk. My stomach clenched as she examined it with a magnifying glass, tracing the letters of my name. "See here," she said, tapping the swoop of the Y in Carter. "That stroke is practiced, too deliberate. It's imitation, not natural writing." Tears stung my eyes. "So it's real? A forgery?" Laura nodded. "And once we prove this isn't your signature, we can show a pattern. Fraud. Intent." For the first time since George's death, I felt a flicker of hope. But Jessica wasn't about to sit idle. That weekend, she hosted what she called a family dinner at the villa. I didn't want to attend, but Daniel insisted. "It's just dinner, Mom. We can talk, try to ease the tension." So I went against my better judgment. The dining room was crowded with Jessica's relatives. Her parents, her brother Mark, her cousin Tracy. They laughed loudly, clinking glasses of wine as though this house had always been theirs. Jessica stood at the head of the table, looking every bit the hostess. She flashed me a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "I'm so glad everyone could be here," she began. "It's been hard since George passed, but Daniel and I are doing everything we can to hold the family together." Her words were honey, but her gaze was knives. Halfway through the meal, she placed her hand delicately on Daniel's arm. "You know, Evelyn's been under a lot of stress. Sometimes she forgets things, like where she puts important papers. We're just trying to help her." The table murmured with sympathetic nods. My face burned. "That's not true. I've managed this house, this family's finances for 50 years. I haven't forgotten a thing." Jessica tilted her head, her voice full of pity. "Of course, Evelyn. But remember last week when you misplaced your purse and accused the maid of stealing it?" Gasps circled the table. I froze. Yes, I had misplaced my purse, but I'd found it minutes later, under the cushion of George's chair. Jessica twisted it into proof of my confusion. Her father, Robert, clucked his tongue. "Poor thing. Maybe she needs a guardian to handle her affairs." Laughter bubbled around the table. I slammed my fork down, my voice shaking. "Enough. You can whisper your lies all you want, but I know what you're doing. You want my home. My husband's legacy. But I won't let you." The room fell silent. Jessica's smile widened, calm and cruel. "See? He gets so upset. This is what I mean, Daniel. She's not thinking clearly." Daniel's eyes flickered, uncertain, but he said nothing. I left the table, my heart pounding, my cheeks wet with tears. Upstairs, I collapsed in George's chair, my hands shaking. Laura's words echoed in my mind. "Document everything." So I pulled out a pen and began writing. The dinner, the accusations, the forged bank papers. Every detail. If they wanted to call me crazy, then my words would prove otherwise. Later, Laura found me on the porch swing, scribbling furiously. "You did the right thing," she said. "Jessica's trying to turn perception against you. But perception isn't proof. We'll get proof." I swallowed hard. And what if they convince Daniel I'm unstable? Laura's eyes narrowed. Then we remind him of the truth. With evidence so strong even he can't deny it. I looked out at the garden George planted, the roses glowing under the moonlight. "They won't take this from me," I whispered. "Not while I'm still alive." 2 mornings later, Laura picked me up in her old pickup, the leather seats cracked from years of sun. "Ready?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," I whispered, clutching the forged bank authorization in my purse. We drove into downtown San Jose, where the county clerk's office stood like a fortress of glass and steel. Inside, the air was cool and stale, the smell of old paper heavy. Laura went straight to the counter, her tone brisk. "We need to review notarization logs for recent property and financial authorizations under the name Evelyn Carter." The clerk, a young man with sleepy eyes, handed over a massive leather-bound ledger. Laura flipped through quickly, her finger running down rows of names and dates. Then she stopped. Her eyes narrowed. "Here, Evelyn Carter. Witnessed by Vanessa Price." I frowned. "Who's that?" Laura smirked grimly. "Jessica's cousin. She's a licensed notary. Which means this so-called authorization wasn't just forged. It was notarized by someone in Jessica's family." My stomach dropped. They weren't just whispering lies. They had the paperwork to back them up. Laura snapped photos with her phone. "That's fraud. And it's going to bite them." But Jessica wasn't waiting around to be exposed. That afternoon, a courier knocked on my door. He handed me an envelope stamped with a lawyer's seal. Inside was a stack of legal papers, neatly bound. Across the top, "Petition for conservatorship of estate, Evelyn Carter." My knees buckled. I sank into George's chair, the words blurring through my tears. They were petitioning the court to strip me of control of my own finances, to declare me unfit to manage my life. If they succeeded, Jessica and Daniel would have access to everything George left me. That evening I called Laura in a panic. "They're trying to erase me," I choked. "They're saying I can't handle my money. If the court agrees, I'll lose everything." Laura's voice came sharp, steady. "Breathe, Evelyn. This is exactly what I warned you about. They're using perception as a weapon. But perception doesn't hold up against proof." I pressed a hand to my chest. "But what if the judge believes them? Everyone in town already thinks I'm losing my mind." Laura paused, then said, "Then we make the judge see the truth. We've got the forged bank authorization, and now the notary record tied to Jessica's cousin. That's fraud. Judges don't look kindly on fraud." Her confidence steadied me just a little. Still, fear gnawed at me. That night, I dreamed of George standing in the garden, his hands stained with rose petals. "Don't let them bury you alive, Evelyn," he said softly. "Fight." I woke with tears on my face, whispering into the empty room, "I will, George. I'll fight." The next morning, Jessica showed up at the villa unannounced, her heels clicking across the marble floor. She held the conservatorship papers like a trophy. "Sign them, Evelyn," she said sweetly, though her eyes were steel. "Make this easy. Daniel and I will take care of everything. You can relax, enjoy your golden years without stress." I forced myself to stand tall, though my legs shook. "I will never sign away my life. Not to you." Her smile widened, cruel and calm. "Then we'll let the judge decide." As she turned to leave, her perfume lingered in the air, cloying and suffocating. I sank into George's chair again, my hands trembling, but my heart burning hotter than ever. Because Jessica thought she had already won. But with Laura by my side, I had something stronger than her lies. I had the truth. The petition date came faster than I could breathe. Every morning I woke with a knot in my chest. Every night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if George could see me from wherever he was. The papers Jessica had filed painted me as increasingly confused, prone to emotional outbursts, and unable to manage significant financial matters. Each word felt like acid on my skin. Laura sat across from me at the villa's kitchen table, stacks of folders spread between us. "Evelyn," she said, her tone brisk, "we're going to dismantle their story. Piece by piece. She pointed to the forged bank authorization. Exhibit A, forged. Will have a handwriting expert testify. Exhibit B, notary log signed by Jessica's cousin. Clear conflict of interest. Exhibit C, your own financial records showing you've been managing perfectly well. I stared at the pile of evidence. Will it be enough? Everyone already thinks I'm losing my mind. Laura leaned forward, her eyes sharp. Courts don't rule on gossip. They rule on proof. But you have to hold it together, Evelyn. No matter what Jessica says in that courtroom, you can't lose your temper. If you do, you'll play right into her hands. I swallowed hard, nodding. I'll try. But Jessica wasn't waiting for the courtroom. That week, I went to church for the first time since George's funeral. As I entered the foyer, whispers rose around me like a wave. She accused the maid of stealing. Poor thing, losing her memory. Daniel and Jessica are saints for putting up with her. I gripped the pew trying to steady myself, but the stares burned into me. After the service, an old friend, Marjorie, pulled me aside. Evelyn, I don't know what to believe. Jessica says you've been having episodes. She says you scream at her, misplace things. I told her that didn't sound like you, but... Her voice trailed off. My heart broke. Marjorie, you've known me for 40 years. Do you think I'd invent this? Do you think I'd fight my own son for no reason? Her eyes softened, but uncertainty lingered. I hope you're okay. And then she walked away. Even Marjorie. That night back at the villa, I sat in George's chair with tears streaming down my face. George, I whispered into the empty room, they've taken everything. My reputation, my friends, even Daniel. How do I fight this? The house creaked around me as though answering, stand tall, Evelyn. Stand tall. 2 days later, Laura arrived with a woman in a crisp gray suit. This is Dr. Patel, Laura explained. A licensed psychiatrist. Independent. She's going to evaluate you. I stiffened. Evaluate me? Dr. Patel smiled kindly. Don't worry, Mrs. Carter. I'm here to show the court the truth, that you're perfectly capable of managing your affairs. The evaluation took hours. Memory tests, problem-solving exercises, conversations about my finances. When it was done, Dr. Patel clasped my hand. You're sharp, Evelyn. They won't be able to spin you as incompetent. I'll testify. For the first time in weeks, I exhaled a full breath. The morning of the hearing, I stood before the mirror, smoothing the black dress I had worn to George's funeral. My reflection stared back, lined face, tired eyes, but not broken. Laura appeared in the doorway. Ready? No, I admitted. But I'll go anyway. She smiled faintly. That's all it takes. At the courthouse, Jessica was already there, surrounded by her family like a queen flanked by courtiers. She wore a pale cream suit, her hair pulled back in a bun, her smile polished for the cameras hovering outside. When she saw me, she leaned close, her whisper venomous. This is the end for you, Evelyn. Today the court will finally see you for what you are. I straightened my shoulders, forcing steel into my voice. They'll see the truth, Jessica. And the truth isn't on your side. Her smile faltered for the first time, and I clung to that tiny crack of fear in her eyes as the bailiff called us in. The courtroom was hushed when the bailiff called the case. In the matter of Evelyn Carter, petition for conservatorship of estate. My heart hammered in my chest as I took my seat beside Laura. Across the aisle, Jessica sat with perfect poise, a cream-colored suit hugging her figure, Daniel at her side like a shadow. Her family filled the benches behind her, smug smiles plastered on their faces. The judge, a stern woman with steel-gray hair, adjusted her glasses. We'll hear opening arguments. Jessica's lawyer rose first. His voice was smooth, practiced. Your Honor, this case is about protecting a vulnerable widow. Mrs. Carter has shown repeated confusion, memory lapses, and emotional instability since her husband's passing. We will present evidence that she is incapable of managing a multimillion-dollar estate responsibly. Conservatorship is not punishment, it is protection. He gestured toward Jessica. Her son and daughter-in-law have stepped in selflessly to support her. But without legal authority, their hands are tied. This petition ensures Mrs. Carter's welfare, both financially and personally. A murmur of sympathy rippled through the room. Then Laura stood, her presence calm but commanding. Your Honor, this case is not about protection. It is about power. Mrs. Carter is of sound mind, and we will show that the petitioners have engaged in fraud, forgery, and slander to strip her of her rights. The evidence will prove that this is not care, it is theft." Her words struck like a hammer. The judge nodded, expression unreadable. The petitioners called Jessica first. She walked to the stand with graceful steps, clutching a tissue like a grieving angel. "Evelyn is like a mother to me," she said, her voice trembling. "But since George passed, she's changed. She loses things, forgets conversations, lashes out at people who try to help her. We only want to keep her safe." Tears welled in her eyes as she dabbed delicately at them. "She accused me of forging her signature on a bank document," Jessica added, her voice cracking. "That hurt most of all. I would never betray her." Behind her, Robert and Linda nodded solemnly, playing their parts. Laura rose for cross-examination. "Mrs. Parker, do you deny notarizing Evelyn Carter's name on a bank authorization form?" Jessica blinked rapidly. "I don't recall." Laura cut her off. "I have the notarization logs. Signed by you. For a document Evelyn swears she never signed. Would you like the court to believe Evelyn is mistaken? Or that you committed fraud?" Gasps echoed. Jessica's composure slipped just for a second before she forced the tears back. "No further questions," Laura said coolly. Next, Jessica's lawyer called their expert, a doctor who had never examined me, only reviewed family notes. "Mrs. Carter shows early signs of cognitive decline," he said confidently. "Paranoia. Memory loss." But when Laura cross-examined, she shredded his credibility. "Doctor, you've never met my client, have you?" He stammered. "Well, no. So your diagnosis is based entirely on documents provided by the petitioners, the same people seeking control of her $77 million estate?" He swallowed hard. "Yes." Laura turned to the judge. No further questions. The jury of onlookers stirred, doubt spreading like wildfire. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the stand, my knees trembling, George's photograph tucked in my purse. The oath felt heavy on my tongue. "I am not confused," I said, my voice shaking at first, then strengthening. "I managed our family's business records for 50 years. I built this home with my husband. And I remember every sacrifice. The only confusion here is the lies told by those who want to erase me." I held up the forged bank authorization. "That is not my hand. That is a lie." The room was silent, every eye fixed on me. Then Laura called Dr. Patel. Calm and steady, she described her evaluation of me. "Mrs. Carter is fully competent. She manages her finances, her memory is intact, her judgment is sound. There is no evidence of cognitive decline. The claims made by the petitioners are baseless." The judge nodded slowly, taking notes. When it was over, Jessica's mask was cracking. Her hands trembled as she gripped Daniel's arm. He avoided my gaze, his face pale, his eyes hollow. The judge's gavel struck once. "This court will review all evidence and reconvene with a ruling." As I left the stand, Laura whispered, "You held firm, Evelyn. That's what the judge needed to see." But in Jessica's eyes I saw fury. Cold-coiled fury. And I knew she wasn't done yet. The days after the hearing were a blur of whispers and headlines. Millionaire widow unfit to manage fortune? Son and daughter-in-law seek conservatorship. Jessica had fed the press like a queen feeding pigeons. Everywhere I went, at the market, at church, even in my own neighborhood, eyes followed me, pitying or suspicious. Laura warned me. "She's trying to win in the court of public opinion. Judges aren't swayed by gossip, but jurors and neighbors are. Don't let her break you." I tried. But the stares were knives. Then came the phone call. Daniel's voice was low, uneasy. "Mom, Jessica wants me to testify at the next hearing. She says I should tell the judge about your episodes." My chest tightened. "Episodes? Daniel, you know that's a lie." Silence stretched between us. "Daniel," I whispered, "look at me. Think about who raised you. Think about Dad. Do you really believe I'm losing my mind?" His breath shook. "I don't know what to believe anymore." Tears stung my eyes. "Then believe in the truth you've seen with your own eyes. Believe in me." But before he could answer, Jessica's voice called in the background, "Hang up, Daniel. Now." The line went dead. That night, Laura sat with me in the kitchen, sipping cold coffee. "She's tightening her grip on him," Laura said grimly. isolating him, feeding him lies until he can't tell which way is up. Classic manipulation. I buried my face in my hands. She's turning my own son into a weapon against me. Laura leaned forward, her voice like steel. Then we show him proof so undeniable he can't ignore it. People under control don't wake up until reality smacks them in the face. Her words lit a tiny flame in me. Proof. We needed more proof. The next blow came 3 days later at a neighborhood gathering. I hadn't planned to attend, but Laura insisted. If you hide, you look guilty. Face them. The party was in a neighbor's backyard, string lights glowing overhead, laughter ringing through the warm California night. At first, people greeted me politely, but whispers trailed behind every smile. She's confused, poor thing. I heard she screamed at Jessica in public. Maybe she really is sick. Then Jessica swept in, radiant in a red dress, Daniel trailing behind like a ghost. She moved from group to group, her laughter high, her voice just loud enough to carry. It's been so hard taking care of Evelyn. She forgets where she is, accuses us of terrible things. We just want what's best for her. Heads nodded sympathetically. A neighbor even patted her arm. You're such a good daughter-in-law. I clenched my fist so tight my nails dug into my palms. Laura leaned close. Let her talk. Every word she says digs her own hole. People notice patterns. But when Jessica's eyes finally landed on me, her smile sharpened. She raised her glass. To family, she said sweetly. Even when they've lost their way. Laughter rippled through the crowd. My face burned, tears stinging my eyes. I turned to leave, but Laura's grip on my arm stopped me. Not yet, she whispered. Stand tall. Don't let her win the stage. So I stood silent, my back straight, while Jessica basked in her false glory. Later, as we walked back to the villa under the quiet stars, Laura spoke softly. She's desperate, Evelyn. Desperate people overplay their hand. That notary log we found? That's just the beginning. If we dig deeper, I guarantee we'll find more. I swallowed hard. But what about Daniel? She's got him in her pocket. Laura's eyes gleamed in the moonlight. Then we'll set him free. With the truth. I clutched George's photo tighter against my chest. She's turned him against me, Laura. But if I lose him forever, my voice cracked. What's the point of winning? Laura squeezed my shoulder. Sometimes the truth costs us people we love. But it's still worth fighting for. The pressure was crushing me. Every day the headlines painted me as unstable. Every night I prayed to George, begging him to guide me through this storm. Laura never wavered. She came to the villa one morning, her face lit with a spark of determination. I found someone, she said. Someone who heard the truth. My heart jolted. Who? An old employee at Pacific Trust Bank. Named Samuel Diaz. He was there the day Jessica filed that authorization form. We met Samuel in a quiet cafe downtown, away from the eyes of neighbors and reporters. He was a middle-aged man with tired eyes and calloused hands, his suit worn at the edges. Laura introduced us. Samuel, this is Evelyn Carter. He shook my hand gently. Mrs. Carter, I'm sorry it's taken me this long. I should have come forward sooner. I leaned in desperate. Please tell me what you know. He pulled out a small leather-bound notebook, much like the one Laura carried. Flipping to a marked page, he read his own handwriting. Jessica came into the bank that day with Daniel. She had the form already filled out. Daniel looked nervous, kept asking if it was right. Jessica told him, "Don't worry. She'll never know the difference." My stomach dropped. The exact words. Samuel continued, voice steady. I thought it was strange. Evelyn Carter built half this town's reputation. Why would she sign something like that? So I wrote it down. I keep notes of odd things. Habit. He slid the notebook across the table. You can use this in court. I'll testify if I have to. Tears blurred my vision. You do that? For me. He nodded. Because it's the right thing. And because I watched Jessica smile while she lied. It didn't sit right with me then, and it sure doesn't now. Laura's smile was fierce. This is it, Evelyn. The crack in her armor. For the first time in months, hope burned in my chest. But Jessica wasn't blind. That evening, Daniel came to the villa. His face was pale, his eyes darting nervously. Mom, he said, his voice low. Jessica says someone's trying to dig up lies about her. She's furious. She thinks you're behind it. I steadied myself. They're not lies, Daniel. They're the truth. People are starting to see it. He shook his head, almost frantic. You don't understand. If you keep pushing, Jessica will destroy you. She'll destroy me too. I reached for his hand. Then leave her. Come back to me. It's not too late. But he pulled away, his voice breaking. It is too late. And then he was gone. The next day, Laura filed Samuel's affidavit with the court. Reporters swarmed, the story spreading fast. Bank employee says daughter-in-law lied in $77 million inheritance case. Jessica's perfect mask began to crack. Her smile in public looked brittle, her eyes darting. At the next hearing she would face Samuel under oath. That night, as I sat in the garden George planted, the roses glowing in the moonlight, Laura sat beside me. You've got the truth on your side now, she said. It's not over, but we've got momentum. I nodded, clutching George's photo. But at what cost? Daniel looked at me today like I was the enemy. I might win the case but lose my son forever. Laura's voice softened. Some wars cost more than we're willing to pay. But you're not fighting just for money. You're fighting for your dignity. For George's legacy. I closed my eyes, letting the night air wash over me. Jessica thought I was weak. He thought I was finished. But with the truth finally in my hands, I was ready for the final battle. The courtroom was packed that morning. Reporters filled the benches, their pens ready, cameras flashing. Everyone knew this hearing could decide the fate of $77 million, and the Carter family itself. Jessica swept in like a movie star, dressed in navy blue this time, her hair in a flawless bun. Daniel followed quietly, shoulders slumped, eyes avoiding mine. Laura squeezed my hand. This is it, Evelyn. Hold steady. The judge called the session to order. We will hear testimony from Mr. Samuel Diaz. Samuel walked to the stand, his steps deliberate, his notebook tucked under his arm. He raised his hand, swore the oath, and sat down. Laura approached. Mr. Diaz, please tell the court what you witnessed. Samuel cleared his throat. On April 14th, Mrs. Jessica Parker and her husband Daniel entered Pacific Trust Bank. They brought an authorization form bearing Mrs. Evelyn Carter's name. Daniel seemed nervous. He asked if it was the right form. Jessica told him, "Don't worry. She'll never know the difference." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously. Samuel lifted his notebook. I wrote it down that same day. I keep detailed notes as part of my job. He handed the notebook to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. The judge examined the page, her expression unreadable. Jessica's lawyer jumped to his feet. Objection. This is hearsay. The judge cut him off. Overruled. The witness's testimony is supported by contemporaneous written notes. Proceed. Laura pressed on. Mr. Diaz, did Mrs. Carter sign that document in front of you? No, Samuel said firmly. The signature was already on the form. And it didn't look natural. It looked copied. Laura turned to the jury. So we have a forged document notarized by Mrs. Parker's cousin and presented at the bank with these words. She'll never know the difference. Ladies and gentlemen, does that sound like care? Or does that sound like theft? The silence in the courtroom was heavy, damning. Jessica shot to her feet, her composure cracking. He's lying, she screamed. He's making this up because she paid him. She jabbed a finger at me, her face twisted with rage. She's manipulating all of you. Evelyn's confused, unstable. She doesn't even know what's real anymore. The judge's gavel slammed. Order in the court. But the damage was done. Jessica's polished mask had shattered in front of everyone. Laura rose smoothly. No further questions. Jessica's lawyer looked pale, fumbling through his papers. He didn't dare call Jessica to the stand. Then the judge turned to me. Mrs. Carter, do you wish to make a statement before I deliberate? My knees shook as I stood, George's photograph clutched in my hand. I am not confused, I said, my voice breaking but clear. I am not unstable. I am a woman who stood beside her husband for 50 years, building a life brick by brick. And I will not be erased by lies, not even by my own family. I turned toward Daniel, my tears falling freely. You are my son. I loved you before you took your first breath. But love does not mean I will let you destroy me. I won't. Daniel's face crumpled. For the first time I saw doubt flood his eyes. He lowered his head into his hands, shoulders shaking. The judge's gavel struck once. The court will recess briefly and return with a ruling. Reporters surged to their feet, shouting questions. Cameras flashed. But all I saw was my son, broken in the corner, and Jessica, eyes blazing with hatred, her grip on him slipping at last. The bailiff's voice boomed, "All rise." The judge entered, her black robes trailing as she took her seat. My knees trembled, but Laura squeezed my hand under the table. "This court has reviewed the testimony, the evidence, and the conduct of all parties," the judge began. Her eyes, sharp and steady, scanned the room. "The petition for conservatorship of Evelyn Carter's estate is hereby denied." Gasps swept through the gallery. The judge continued, her voice firm. "Furthermore, the court finds substantial evidence of attempted fraud and misrepresentation by Mrs. Jessica Parker. This matter will be referred for criminal investigation. Mrs. Carter retains full authority over her property and finances." Her gavel struck. Final. For a heartbeat I couldn't breathe. Relief flooded me so quickly my chest ached. I had won. George's legacy was safe. But the sound of Jessica's scream shattered the silence. "No," she shrieked, leaping to her feet. "This is wrong. She's a crazy old woman, she doesn't deserve a penny." The bailiffs rushed forward as Jessica thrashed, her red face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this, Evelyn. You'll lose everything, everything." The judge slammed her gavel again. "Remove her from my courtroom." The bailiffs dragged her out, still screaming, her voice echoing down the marble hall. Daniel didn't move. He sat slumped at the table, his face buried in his hands. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were red, swollen. "Mom," he whispered. I didn't want this. I thought Jessica was right. I thought," his voice cracked. "I don't know what's true anymore." Tears stung my eyes. "Then listen to your heart, Daniel. You know me. You know your father. Would we ever lie to you?" He shook his head violently, his whole body trembling. "I betrayed you. I betrayed Dad. I don't deserve forgiveness." I reached out, but he pulled away, staggering to his feet. "I can't face you," he muttered before stumbling out of the courtroom. Reporters swarmed instantly, cameras flashing, voices shouting. "Mrs. Carter, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you have anything to say to your son? What about Jessica facing fraud charges?" Laura shielded me, her arm firm around my shoulders as we pushed through the chaos. "No comment," she barked at the press. But my silence wasn't because of strategy. It was because my heart was breaking. That night back at the villa, the house felt both safe and hollow. The roses George planted swayed in the California breeze, moonlight spilling across the garden. The villa was mine again. The bank account secure. The papers signed and sealed. But the chair across from me was empty. George's photo sat on the table, his warm smile frozen in time. "We won, George," I whispered. My tears fell onto the wood, hot and endless. "But I lost him. I lost our boy." Laura sat quietly beside me, sipping tea. She didn't try to fill the silence. At last she said softly, "Sometimes victory doesn't feel like winning. But Evelyn, you stood up. You refused to let them erase you. That matters." I nodded slowly, wiping my eyes. "Yes. But I would have given every dollar, every brick of this house, just to have my son back." The night answered with only silence. In the distance, I thought I heard the faint echo of footsteps on the driveway. My heart leapt, hoping, praying it was Daniel. But when I opened the door, there was nothing but the empty California night. And I realized the truth. I had regained my home, my dignity, my name, but I had lost my son forever. The villa was silent when I stepped inside that evening. The courtroom chaos, the shouting reporters, Jessica's shrill voice, it all faded into memory as I closed the heavy oak door. The air smelled faintly of roses from the garden George planted, a reminder of love rooted deep in this soil. I had won. On paper I had everything. The estate, the villa, my independence. But victory felt like ashes on my tongue. I walked slowly through each room. In the study, George's desk gleamed, cleared of Jessica's papers and lies. I ran my hand over the polished wood, whispering, "It's yours again, George." Ours. In the kitchen, the sunlight poured across the counter where we used to eat breakfast together. Now the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Upstairs, Daniel's childhood room was just as I remembered, Trophies on the shelf, photographs of his younger years, smiling freely before greed and manipulation hardened his eyes. I sat on his bed and clutched one of his old baseball gloves. The leather still smelled faintly of grass and dust. "Where are you, my boy?" I whispered. "Will you ever come home?" But the silence gave no answer. That weekend, neighbors began to stop by. Some offered casseroles. Others gave awkward apologies. "I'm sorry, Evelyn," Mrs. Thompson murmured, her eyes downcast. "Jessica told us things. We believed her. I should have trusted you." I forced a smile. "It's all right. Lies spread fast. The truth takes longer." But though I accepted their kindness, the wound remained. Gossip leaves scars no verdict can erase. Laura visited often, her presence a steady anchor. We would sit on the porch swing, watching the California sunset bleed orange and gold across the sky. "You did it," she told me one evening. "You kept your name, your dignity. George would be proud." Tears welled in my eyes. "I'd give it all back, Laura. Every dollar, every brick of this house, if it meant Daniel would walk through that door again." She touched my hand gently. "Some things are beyond our power. But Evelyn, you showed the world you weren't invisible. That matters." I nodded, though my heart still ached. At night, I often wandered into the garden. The roses swayed in the breeze, their petals glowing under the moonlight. George had planted them for me when times were lean, saying, "No matter what happens, we'll always have beauty to hold on to." I knelt in the soil, pressing my hands into the earth. "We did it, George," I whispered through tears. "We protected what we built. But it cost us our son." The night air carried the faint sound of laughter from a distant neighbor's house. Families together. Children playing. Life moving forward. Mine felt suspended, heavy with absence. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, a soft knock echoed at the door. My heart leapt, foolishly hoping it was Daniel. But when I opened it, only Laura stood there holding a bag of groceries. For a brief moment, disappointment crushed me. Then I realized something. Maybe Daniel was gone. Maybe my son had chosen a different life. But I was not alone. I still had my friends, my community, and above all, myself. I placed George's photo back on the mantel, straightened it with trembling hands. His smile gazed out, steady and warm. "I kept my promise," I whispered. "I didn't let them erase me. I didn't let them steal what we built, even if it broke me." And as the night settled around the villa, silver moonlight spilling across the floor, I realized something deeper. Jessica had taken my peace. Daniel had taken my heart. But they had not taken me. I was still Evelyn Carter. And this was still my home.